That episode tasted a lot like dun dun dun. So hey guys, here's my new review for the next episode of True Detective Season 2. And this probably was one of the best episodes of the series so far, of this season. It's one of my favorites. Because a lot of stuff happened that both surprised me and intrigued me and made me laugh. That's something that this episode has too, is it's probably the funniest episode of the entire True Detective saga. There's a scene where Rachel McAdams is in her sex rehabilitation clinic, and there's all these guys who are these very pig-headed, very macho men, and then comes to Rachel, and the counselor's like, well, why don't you talk about why you're here? One of the cops is like, yeah, why the are you here? And she says, well, because I like dick. Big dick. Not just big, though. Girthy. And the other guys are just like, wow. Interesting. So there was a lot of funny dialogue in this episode, which is rare. Not to say that stuff hasn't been funny in the last two seasons of the show, but as interesting as Rust's view on humanity was, this episode was actually straight up funny. This is some of the funniest writing the show has ever had. The events that happened in the last episode led to pretty much everyone getting screwed. Colin Farrell had to quit. Rachel McAdams is now an evidence lockup, and Taylor Kitsch is now insurance fraud. So basically, the entire investigation was defunct. They just blamed Casper's death on the Mexicans, and the cops all went down for everything that happened with that big shootout. So now what happens is everyone kind of moving on. But no, Rachel McAdams is the Rust of this episode. She is actually gung-ho on trying to find out what happened to this missing girl. And then these photos come up, and then the conspiracy begins to have solid footing. And that's something that we knew was going to happen with True Detective, but it's actually on a much more interesting scale. Now, if any of you have ever seen the movie LA Confidential, it's actually very similar to that. Sort of the setup with the higher officials, Casper being in affiliation with the pimps, and women call girls having, and these officials, high elected officials, having these certain risque photos. It's like LA Confidential. Very, very similar. But for character dramas, Vince Vaughn again delivered a really great performance. He actually delivered one of my favorite lines. He and his wife are at odds because he's basically going full gangster again. It's because basically, as I said a few episodes ago, Vince has come to the conclusion that you can try and get out of the game, but the game never leaves you. And he kind of has this very interesting reason for why he became a criminal. And it's not because he wanted to, it's because he was good at it, it's because he excelled at it, and it wasn't his decision to decide. He was born drafted on the wrong side of a class war. But overall, the idea of Vince Vaughn coming back into the criminal element is going to bite him, obviously. Everything is foreshadowing to it. Especially with that painting on the wall, there was this anaconda and this crocodile battling. And usually in this sort of situation, the crocodile would kind of be biting on the anaconda, but the anaconda would be eating the crocodile. But no, it's kind of representing, in my opinion, the slithering snake is, the slithering sly snake is what Vince was trying to be. But now the crocodile is the original him coming out and just chomping on it. And it's going to overexpose him. At least that was my interpretation of that painting. Maybe I'm going way too deep into it. But I just thought it was way too prominently shown to not be a metaphor of what the story's, what's going on with the story. Taylor Kitsch had a really interesting part of this episode with his mother. It basically made me think of Norman Bates if he was a cop and if his mother was still alive. We now know that his mother is the catalyst for everything that has socially and physically and mentally affected Taylor Kitsch's character. Because the woman is absolutely insane. She calls him a disaster because she ruined her career as a dancer. And I think she was kind of, in my opinion, I think her dancing career was a stripper, if I'm correct. So that's just weird. It makes sense of why he's so gung-ho about being a father, because he's like, now I can be around. I can help this kid. I can make sure he doesn't turn out like me. Which also showed me that this season has definitely had an overall arc of fatherhood, because Colin Farrell's trying to get his kid back. Vince Vaughn's trying to have a kid. Rachel McAdams is having issues with her father. Kind of this social disconnect. and Taylor Kitsch's going to be a dad. So it's interesting to see that this fatherhood element has been this overall encompass of the show. And so in the end, this episode, in my opinion, was actually really good. It was constant. There was great action throughout. Great way of making me go, oh, damn, at the end. So I think the episode ended fantastic. As I said, the jokes were really good. The music was really good in this episode. So in the end, this is probably one of the best episodes they've done on True Detective. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 7. I admit it. I love this episode. The one thing I will say, though, that has been lost, definitely in this episode, which is a bit, like, it was there, but definitely not as prominent, was the cinematography. In comparison to how good the cinematography was in the first episode, as aside from this one, there was nothing really special about any of the shots. So I'm hoping that with the last 3 episodes that the cinematography, comes back and becomes a prominent part of the show. But in the end, this episode was great. I think it was fantastic. This whole season has come around. It's been great. It will not really come around, but definitely shown itself to be fantastic. Anyway, guys, that's all for me. See you later. Buckle down.